I'm so offended.
No,
by
Julie
that
Roberts
statement.
is not
She-
that impressive for me.
All right, Charles. You know
Okay.
what? I don't know if you have any boxing gloves anywhere in the house, but I need to get them on, and I need to fight Charles. This is craziness. You guys are crazy.
I'm sorry.
Bangarang, my friends, and welcome to Let's Talk Stories, the podcast where three story-obsessed storytellers unpack the movies, shows, and characters that live rent-free in our heads. It's therapy, but for stories that made us. Hello, everybody. Today we have a very special guest, one that I have talked about. You guys know I have talked about so many times on this show about wanting to have on the show. My mentor and friend, Alex Eltringham. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty great. How about yourself?
I am doing pretty good. For everybody else that you guys already know, the usual, I'm your host, Jared, and
I got Jaylon over here.
And I'm Charles. Hello.
And today we are diving in to a movie that has made a very, very big impact on three of the four people in this episode. It was the start of my understanding of what filmmaking was, or at least what I thought filmmaking was, and it also helped clear up a lot of misconceptions at the time about what film was. But I also found that it held a special place in Alex and Charles's heart as well, and hopefully now Jaylon can join that club as a person who just recently saw it for the first time. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today. I don't even know if I said the name. We're talking about Hook. So the interesting and fantastic rendition of Peter Pan, starring. We'll talk about who it stars and who's directed and all that in a minute. But before we do that, let's check in. How has everybody's weekend been? How has everybody been doing? Regale me with your life experience.
I was just telling Jaylon that like this week has not actually been like the most eventful thing for me, which has been kind of a blessing, which is nice. Like I think like one of the more special things that I've been able to do this week is I've been able to read more and more of Son of a Witch by Gregory Maguire, which is the sequel to Wicked, which I wanted to read back in college when I first read the book, and I just never got around to it. And I think it was my brother, I can't remember, someone in my family borrowed it for me, and I've been reading the library. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll read it. I'm kind of doing other stuff for now, but I've been reading and really enjoying it. That kind of interesting fantasy that Maguire has. So that's like mostly been the thing for me this week. It's been thankfully quiet.
That makes sense. And you're a guy. So I was watching this thing yesterday, this comedy thing, and they were talking about the difference between women and men. And they were like, in relationships, women want to be happy and men want peace. Peace comes from nothing. And so they were talking about like how when women ask, like, what are you thinking about? And men are like, nothing. And
Nothing.
Because in essence, we're in a peaceful state. And so you can't have both. And so when you said that about like, it was like basically just nothing was happening. All I'm thinking of is like, Charles had peace this weekend, and I'm here for it. So respect it. What about you, Jaylon?
I was going to say, actually, I had the opposite experience of Charles, unfortunately, because I always say I have an odd brain for a female because in a lot of ways it works like the male brain. So the amount of time that my husband and I can sit in comfortable silence is unbelievable. But both of us being introverts inadvertently filled up our social calendar a bit much this week. And so we just really crashed last night. But I was able to watch Hook, which is a funny story for how that experience turned out, because at first I accidentally started watching a movie that was not Hook. And then we ended up just watching some more of Lucifer, which I'm really appreciating that show. I think there's some really interesting discussions there about, not only character development, but just the whole religion thing in general and how humans live and this spiritual realm that surrounds us. Subverting narratives that we've been taught are true, but, what if they're not? So I find that show very fascinating. But yeah, that's what we did.
I can attest to Jaylon being traumatized by what she thought was
totally
Hook, and it was not. And the fact that she messaged me and was like, I might have to sit this one out because this is, I was just like, I don't know what you're watching.
No, first he told me, no, you can't. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute.
True. I did totally shut down any retreat, but that is true. That is true. Call me out on it. I did do that. But that was because
Hook. There shouldn't be anything objectively wrong with Hook.
Which is what I was, at first I was like, okay, maybe, because I hadn't seen it in a while. So I was like, this was like at the beginning you had said this to me. So I was like, I was trying to think of like what happened at the beginning that would be horrible. So I was just like, it gets better. Whatever it is, I'm sure it gets better. Don't worry. But then me and Alice watched it yesterday, and I was like, I don't know what she was talking about. But by that time, I had already figured out that you were watching the wrong movie at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm still so, like, I still want to know what the hell that movie was, because I have to see it now.
I have no idea. It was somewhere between, it started out kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean, like the darkest parts of that movie, and then it turned into like Romeo and Juliet slasher, psychological horror or something.
I was looking today to get my brain into this for some vintage poster pictures of Hook. I think I know what you're talking about because I saw a poster that was like
okay. Unfortunately, I started watching that movie. And
I think there's this horror movie version of Peter Pan.
Yeah. When I tell you I was traumatized. I was traumatized.
Yeah. You won. That's the difference.
When she said it, I was like, okay, wait, either Jaylon is way more sensitive than I thought.
I am, but
I was like, no, I'm trying. I want to nurture her, help her, and whatever. But I also have to be like, a bully, like I always am, and just be like, deal with it.
Yeah. But this one was, that was my bad. But I paid for my mistake with trauma, so I think it all worked out.
Are you able to watch, the Hook we are talking about today?
Yes, I was. And I did, before I started playing it, I had double checked it with Jared too. I sent him the screenshot and I was like, this is the one, right? And he said, yeah. And then I went to play it, the free version, and it was like, it just started playing a different version.
It was the real Hook poster.
It was.
I didn't just send her off. I didn't just do some shit where I was like, yeah, that's it, and then see what happens. No, it was like, it was totally
you would, actual. Though.
I would, yes, but I did not at that time. I genuinely was like, no, that's the right movie. But yeah. So what about you, Alex?
It was pretty uneventful as well, at least for me. Just took probably about 6 meetings, got the house clean,
So now you guys see it. You guys see what, the uneventful to Alex is like a marathon for me. I'm just like 6 meetings. I'm like, no. That's.
I need approximately 20 business days to recover now.
That happens sometimes, particularly after a rough production.
Did we say yet that Alex is a director?
Oh, we did not. Yes, Alex is a filmmaker. Thank you, Jaylon. Alex is a filmmaker. He is a director. He's also a budding producer. He's done everything there is to do on a set, I believe. Right, Alex?
Pretty much. I'm having a hard time thinking of something I haven't done.
So, there you go.
I haven't done the actual stunts.
So, yeah, okay. So, he's done everything but stunts, which is, for anybody who's not a filmmaker, that's awesome and insane to think about. He's got almost 30 years of experience, which is awesome. As for those that don't know, I think everybody should know by now. I've talked about it on the podcast, but I share residence with Alex at this point, and so what happened for his week overlapped a little bit with what happens with my week at some point or another. My weekend specifically was pretty chill. It's pretty chill. I wore myself out on Saturday doing what I feel like Alex is just adept at doing, and that's just moving around and getting things done. And I, tried to assist as best I could and was like, I'm dying. So, but it was a pretty solid, cool time. We watched some, I got him into Lois and Superman and Lois, which I got these two to watch. I got them to watch the pilot, and they liked it. So, yeah, I'm just converting as many people as I can to. Charles is already a part of the Superman cult, as you can see on his T-shirt. But I'm trying to convert as many people as I can to the Superman cult. Jaylon is a stubborn person who will not join the club.
Okay. Well, in my defense, I did also, I think I mentioned this to you, Jared, as a pick-me-up after I scared you with, I'm sitting this week out because I'm actually traumatized now. When we started watching Lucifer, I did catch where the actor who played Superman it was Smallville, right?
Yep, Tom Welling, yep.
So he played a role in the show Lucifer, and I did catch where they had a joke where his character says everyone has some kind of kryptonite. And I was like, I understood that reference.
Yes, she had a Captain America moment. I love it. So
Not that one.
So yeah, me and Alex have been checking that out, and I've been having a blast showing him that. And then we watched Hook yesterday, so that was also pretty cool. It was really cool for me to be able to watch it with my mentor, knowing where it started for me, and when we met, that being a part of our conversation of something we had in common. To be able to sit down and finally actually watch it together in person, which was awesome. So I'm thrilled about that. But all of that catch-up stuff aside, let's dive into Hook itself. So Hook was directed by, this is the background information for all those who have not seen Hook. There's going to be spoilers. You are about 30 some odd years late if you have not seen the movie yet. So
if you're watching this podcast and you haven't seen Hook, do what we did and go watch it, then do the podcast.
Yes, and then come back and watch it, and come back and watch the podcast.
Don't do what I did and watch whatever it was that I watched.
That we will make sure that in the story notes or whatever, we have the poster to the actual movie, so that way you can compare and be like, I don't think this is that. And if you do find yourself traumatized, totally,
I'm sorry, there with you.
Yeah.
Look, if it doesn't start with that TriStar logo, you know it's not the right film.
Okay, so Hook, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Jim V. Hart and Malia Scotch-Marmo, and uncredited Carrie Fisher, which I did not know. But that's pretty cool. Yeah, which I thought is pretty cool. I know she was in the movie, uncredited, but I did not know that she had a hand in some of the writing part of things. Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, Julia Roberts, Maggie Smith, and Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins, I always enjoy. Actually, I can't say I always enjoy, but the times in which I've seen him, I've enjoyed him. I think the only other time that I've seen him that I can consciously remember is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which me and Charles watched, not together, but we did watch and we talked about on Deja Vu. That was such a good episode. I enjoyed that conversation. And this is a genre. The genre is fantasy, family, and midlife drama. That's a weird thing, but all right. Midlife drama. I feel like every day of my life is midlife drama. So
Yep.
The premise: an adult Peter Pan has forgotten Neverland until Captain Hook kidnaps his children. Some side trivia: Spielberg felt creatively lost while making Hook, mirroring Peter's journey almost too closely, which I also kind of knew about, but I did not know to the extent. But that always makes me a little bit sad when you hear about like a director that made a film, especially one that's got like a cult following and people like really like it, to know that the director or sometimes even actors were just like, this was not the easiest time in my life and I did not enjoy this experience or whatever. Those are always weird. I also get really, really bummed, like the Smallville podcast, Talkville, where they rewatch the podcast. So when I listen to Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum talk about it, they always talk about like, I don't remember this scene, or I don't remember that we did this, or I don't really care. I care about this. And it's like, oh, that hurts my heart because I feel like, because I loved it so much. And it's like, I wanted them to love it. But as I've gotten more into understanding the filmmaking process, I do kind of understand that actors specifically, they do a job and then they go on and do other things. So it's not like it doesn't sit with them for years on end like it does for people who watched it for years on end. But
depends.
Does it?
It depends on the actor and it depends on the role.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like look at Mandy Patinkin with Inigo Montoya. He embodies that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess not everybody does that.
Also, it's crazy. The timing of this, if I'm correct, I do believe I'm correct. Spielberg's like, I'm really lost. I did Hook, and I don't really like Hook, and I didn't like how it turned out. And then Homeboy did Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, that was released in the same year in 1993, which is like the greatest directorial achievement I can think of, because those two films are masterpieces and like two different galaxies apart. So this is like, in my head, Hook is kind of connected to that era too.
I have a beef with Schindler's List, but yeah.
Because with that story, it feels like this moment of budding growth for the director. And through Hook, it was like his own self-discovery of what did he want to do next? How did he want to do it?
Yep.
Valid. It's a good point. Steven Spielberg in general is one of those directors that I feel like everybody's always like, you should love him or you should like him and you should whatever. I respect him because I respect his body of work. I don't care about Steven Spielberg as much as I feel like it's put out there that you should. Is that weird? Do you guys feel like that's weird?
Yes.
Okay.
Robert has a style. He likes to hit on the whimsy, the childlike naivete. He also really likes to get into really core human emotions that like kind of hit the opposite spectrum. So, you know, his vision isn't always hope, which I know is your preferred theme. So with Spielberg, it's much more along the lines of childlike innocence, preserving creativity. You know, that's just not his bag. Hope is much more coming from your actions and who you are and what you do rather than the idea of hope itself.
I like hope, but what I do think
No,
when you say that it's more whimsical and thank you, Jayla. When it's more whimsical and childlike wonder, I think because my soul is so dark that I tend to frown and balk at all things that are childlike whimsy, and my soul's just like, I don't have the innocence that I need to appreciate these things the way that other people do. I feel like my innocence, like I like really tragic, dark characters that's life. I say this every episode. People must die a lot in the first act, and there must be like horrible things happening all the time, and in the end there must be no winners. That is my bag. I love that. It's one of the reasons why I really like Martin Scorsese movies, because I feel like nobody ever wins in those movies, and I kind of like that. I kind of dig that, which is weird. But so like when we talk about like Superman, James Gunn Superman, that is more like a niche thing for me of like, oh, I make an exception for Superman. But I overall like darker things. So like E.T., for instance, I have such issues with E.T. One, because E.T. scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, and I will never forgive Steven Spielberg for putting that out into the world. But like those fucking what was it the Reese's Pieces or the M&Ms?
Reese's,
Which one was it?
yeah.
Whatever they were, the fucking candies on the stairs and the fucking fingers and all that shit. No, it's just not allowed, and I hate it. And everybody else is like, it's a family movie, and it's about love and unconditional love and friendship, and I'm like, it's about scaring the shit out of me, and I don't really enjoy that. So but like when I think about all the Steven Spielberg movies, Jurassic Park I love Jurassic Park. I will not have no issue with that, and Hook I love. But I think with a lot of directors you have the hit or miss type of thing for everybody. But thank you, Charles.
Might be more in your wheelhouse.
I did enjoy that. I saw that with you, actually, I believe, for film appreciation. I believe we watched that.
Oh, we did.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
We did. Yes, and I that was the first time I ever saw it, and I really, really did enjoy that film. And I forgot that was made by Steven Spielberg, but that is a good one. Also, Charles, thank you for the support there with the immediate shutdown of telling me I was weird.
Because I think Spielberg is genuinely fascinating. Like, I know it's one of those things that, like, if you're a certain age, not so much now, but like, you know, you're like he's 90s kid or whatever, you're like supposed to worship him, whatever, because he made Jurassic Park, which is, you know, like the Bible for a certain generation. More than that, though, honestly, I just find him really, really interesting of like his work, and like that there is something like E.T. and where E.T. comes from and why it is the way it is. But then there's Hook and why Hook is the way it is and what it makes me feel. But then also, like, speaking of that, like hopefully it comes out next year, that he's making a horror alien movie, which is fantastic, because I've talked about this before, how his War of the Worlds scared me to no end. I still have nightmares about that movie to this day, 20 years later, which is insane. But it's not just that. Like, there's scary stuff in Indiana Jones, the scary stuff in Jurassic Park. There's the boo box in this film that always kind of give me a little bit of heebie-jeebies as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they put Glenn Close in that, by the way. That's Glenn Close dressed as a man.
Yeah.
With the beard.
Nuts.
I have to show you, Jill. I don't know if you recognized her, but it was the part where you think that Hook is going to recognize Peter, but it's when he's like, "There's an enemy amongst us" or whatever, and then it's the one that he one that he ends up.
You.
That's Glenn Close.
Okay, all right. I was trying to figure out where Carrie Fisher was in this.
She is the one kissing the dude on the bridge.
Yeah, when Peter's flying and there's that little couple that floats up because of she's in there.
It was Carrie Fisher and
George Lucas.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, I love fun facts like that. I was going to say, Jared, I am more in your camp about the Steven Spielberg being, like, It's a weird thing. Okay, hear me out. I'm supporting the person that I was about to blame for traumatizing me this weekend. So this is
I do
Thank
not
you.
care for
Thank
Ready
you.
Player One. I do not know what Steven Spielberg was doing with that one. I did not care for that film.
I feel like growing up, having an interest in filmmaking and storytelling, I always had Steven Spielberg held up to me as this is the person to aspire to. This is your role model if you want to make films. And I never felt like I could study his work at that point because I wasn't brave enough to watch all of the movies that he had made. So to me, he doesn't strike me as a director who's big into that childlike whimsy. I see, like, in my experience with films that I loved growing up, I would have said Kenny Ortega was more of that director. And Steven Spielberg was the one who was actually having these discussions about, like, this is actually the way the real world works, and there's scary moments. So, and part of it was just that, like, I wasn't able to enjoy his films and get at the deeper meaning, at the theme that was under them, because, again, I was too sensitive. I was too scared to watch all of those. So I feel like I am in Jared's camp, but for the opposite reason. Like, I never appreciated his work as much as I wanted to, and that was just because I was too sensitive.
I feel like what Charles said about War of the Worlds versus E.T. I feel like what Charles said is more normal than my beef. I feel like War of the Worlds is supposed to be scary, a little bit, but like E.T. is supposed to be like this family friendly movie, and here I am. But I mean, this is also coming from the guy who can't stand Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because the Oompa Loompa song terrifies me to no end, and I will physically assault you. If you play that song around me, I will do it. My brother is a witness. I will strike you and run. Both things will happen.
It's a fight or flight response.
It is.
Fight,
And
flight.
I take full responsibility for my issues, but that is I own it. So let's talk about why we think this movie divides audiences the way that it does. So currently, as we stand, it probably hasn't adjusted in years, but like, so currently as we stand, Rotten Tomatoes has this movie at 29%, and I know most of us don't give a shit about what Rotten Tomatoes says. I know, especially Charles. However, nonetheless, I do feel that a lot of times it's a good. Although I do care about what Rotten Tomatoes says to an extent, it's less about what the critics say. I more often not care about what the audience side says. Generally, it looks like the audience loves it. Okay, so it's like 76% audience thinks that this is great. Critics thought it was 29%. They thought it was trash, I guess. Outside of just the internet, I've heard in conversations that I've had with people, there's always been this divide where like you'll either have people that are like, I love Hook so much, it's such a great movie, it brings me back to my childhood, and then I have other people that are like, that movie is trash, it's the worst thing ever, and I have no idea why they made it. And I'm always just like, I don't understand why people feel that way. Have you seen the movie? I've seen the movie. I think the movie's pretty great. So I wonder why you guys think this movie divides people.
I mean, it's, even as a kid, it's kind of a weird movie. Like, oh my gosh, I still can't figure out the crocodile gig at the end. I still can't. To this day.
No.
I can't. It's not. It's interestingly, it's not necessarily the best structured piece. Like, there's some weirdnesses in it, in the town. Like, now I don't care, but it is kind of a strange movie, and it goes on a long time. I think tonally, it's kind of weird because, like, oh my gosh, I grew up with Hook, and it's like, I love Hook, and there's like conversations in this movie that are like really serious and adult, so it's like kind of a contrasting thing to it. And I think some folk just, it doesn't really click with them. Like, for some reason Maggie's singing a song, but it's not a musical, and I know it was originally going to be a musical and yada yada yada, but like, I think there's just kind of a weirdness to the movie that maybe people just kind of are put off by, not so enchanted. I think it's dope as hell. And I was telling my family this recently. I'm like, I just like weird things like that. Like, I didn't used to, but the older I get, the more intrigued I am by these weird things. Like, I watched all of the Book of Henry, unironically, a couple months ago. Look up the movie. It's weird as frack. It's just, I was interested in it for that reason. But I don't know. Because I first of all, there are so many people who will be like, this movie's really bad. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? It's just a movie. So I'm more in that camp in general, but I don't really know because it doesn't. I think it does a heck of a lot more interesting stuff than it does not. So I don't know. I think it's just this weird oddity that exists in the back of our brains as a culture for some reason. Which is funny that you say that because almost every con I go to, I always see someone dressed as Rufio.
You do.
Interesting.
See, the thing is, the amount of content they had for Hook far exceeds the 2-hour runtime of the film. I think they had a film that was originally like 5.5 hours, something like that. And that's why you're going to find a lot of those weird kind of cuts that don't necessarily make sense, but feel right, you know? And that's like another added layer to the oddity, right? When I look at why audiences and critics have such a disparaging number in agreement here, I have to remember that, filmmakers look at everything through a filmmaker's lens. They're looking at the quality, they're looking at the flow, they're looking at the technical aspects of everything. Whereas audiences don't care. They really don't care. What they want is a good story. They want to feel something. And to be honest, it's hard not to feel something when John Williams is doing your music. So with Hook, it's got this oddity where it's already targeting an audience that never gets targeted, right? Because it feels like a kid's film. By the way, it also counts as a Christmas film. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it is targeting on the fact that Peter Pan's going through a midlife crisis.
Which
and
is
how
an
many
awesome
things
concept.
actually go beyond that, especially when it comes to an action adventure film. Like, how many times are we going to get a story about a teenage boy being the chosen one going off and doing some grand adventure? Every time, right? So Hook is this oddity where it's someone who's middle-aged going through a completely different set of challenges. And that's not something that's generally appealing for the standardized view of things. And also, it doesn't quite follow the hero's journey perfectly. It follows the plot points of the story pretty well, but it does have pacing issues. It does have some logic issues, and a lot of these elements are, going to weigh really heavily. Whereas audiences, they're going to really connect with the themes and the feelings and the wholesomeness of the film, and that's going to ultimately, push them to like the film way more. And it's kind of got that same kind of feeling of cult classic that, Labyrinth has. And, Labyrinth itself is another weird film. Anything Jim Henson is kind of weird. So it all kind of like goes in that direction, I think.
I think it's really funny that in general, from what you're saying, Alex, the people who don't appreciate this movie are looking at it through too much of a stuffy adult lens and aren't looking at it through the childlike whimsy lens that Peter Pan is the essence of. So it's kind of funny that, like, if you don't like the movie, you literally missed the point of the theme. So it wasn't for you because you weren't going to get it. So whatever.
Right, the line's in there, Maggie Smith delivers, stop growing up. Stop this instant.
Mm-hmm.
That should be the line at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. I had a aunt who would always say that to me whenever we got together. It would be, just stop growing, because at some point, all of my aunts are short, and eventually, at some point in all of us kids' lives, we got taller than them, and every time we'd see them, stop growing this instant.
On
Reminds me of that.
somewhat related note, it's funny you bring up your mom because my mom has always been really into this movie. So it's not like something that she and I specifically share or whatever, but like it's something when I see with this movie, I think of my mom because she always really liked this movie.
I think of my mom too. I'll tell you why for the listeners, because I think all of you guys have heard the story, but the audience hasn't heard the story.
Keep
But
going, Jared. Keep going.
Charles, I think every time we have a guest, you and I have to have a fight, and
So this podcast isn't big enough for the two of us.
But before I tell you the story about that, the only issue that I had with this movie, that just like glaring issue that bothered me, and maybe it's because I'm just kind of blind. I really just get into story, and so I want to know, is the story any good? I don't have. Sometimes I feel like I don't have the filmmaker eye that other people do that are more experienced in filmmaking. So there's stuff that I'll miss or that I won't see. But story, I have a sharp eye for. So I'll know when a story feels wrong, or I'll know that when whatever. And I think a lot of people have that, but I feel like mine's is a little more refined, I guess. But the one thing that bothered me about this movie that just kept sticking out to me was the thing with Jack, where like he was like, I couldn't figure out, is Jack hypnotized and brainwashed, or is he just like because the way that it sold to me at first was just like, okay, well, Hook is, he's like, I'm going to convince this kid to think I'm his dad and love me and whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. I get that. That makes sense. I wrote it in my own novel of like a character, you know, having a parental relationship to the person that's kind of kidnapped them. I get that part. But then there were other parts where it was like, run home, Jack. And then he would be like, and he would have this moment where he'd just be like he was coming out of it. And I was like, well, that's not really how love works. So that seems weird. But so I was just, that thing just kept bothering me. And every time it would happen where like something, I was just like, I don't like that. I don't like that. You need to pick a struggle. Do you want this to be Stockholm Syndrome, or do you want this to be some sort of magical hypnosis type of situation that's happening? That's personal. I just didn't like it either way. It's not that I didn't like it. It was just confusing to me. But anyway, the story.
Let me stop right there. I've got a counter to that. First thing, remember I just said that there's like 5.5 hours of film that we don't see, 3.5 of?
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, a failing of the writing. That empirically, it's just a failing of the writing. That is their fault. That's their bad. There's this problem with Neverland, and I don't think many people catch it, but you don't necessarily remember home when you're there. You remember what's in front of you. You even see, Peter Pan forget home. So when you're in Neverland, it's actually part of the mythos that you forget home. So that run home Jack is that calling back. He does forget.
But even with that, though, Maggie doesn't seem to forget. So it doesn't feel like... That's why it doesn't, like... I feel like if Maggie had the same reaction, it would feel like it would make more sense to me. But I don't know.
It's all trauma-based. Everything's trauma-based. Look at every costume on the Lost Boys. Did you see the 2 Union drummers?
I didn't catch it.
There's 2 Union drummers. They're in Union outfits from the Civil War.
Shit.
Look at the costumes. Pay attention to who they are. You're going to realize most of them have some kind of trauma. And all the trauma makes them want to forget. That's part of the mythos of Neverland.
Fascinating.
That makes sense.
So Maggie has less of a hard time because she can still feel the love. She fights for it. She's holding on to it. You see in that scene with Hook, when Hook's like, your parents don't love you. They put you to bed so they can, have time of their own.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie doesn't believe that, but Jack does.
Right, and we see that very early on.
Yeah.
With how his dad lets him down and that kind of thing. Which makes complete sense.
Yeah, and that all ties back into the original mythos of Pan.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. But yeah, so that's what I think.
The film should have. Let me point that out. The film should have.
I find it really interesting because I always loved the myth of Neverland, and I loved the theme of Peter Pan so much. But I feel like every single movie I've ever watched, there's been too many things that just made me feel weird about it. And I had a hard time just falling into it the way I really wanted to, just knowing the myth and the theme of it. So like when Peter Pan decides that he's going to stay in the human world forever because he starts drooling over this sleeping granddaughter and like just decides that he is going to kiss her. Like, I don't know, that scene just made me feel so weird. And I don't see romance in that. That just seems really, really weird. So there's like always little things like that it seems like the adaptions don't explain very well.
Yeah.
And they don't line up very well.
Put a pin on that for a second, because that's something that circles back.
Don't know if you know that's also part of the mythos. Peter Pan's baby.
Yeah, see, and that's the part that I don't. It always comes up, and it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like something that goes into what the myth is supposed to be. So I'm like, why? Why can't we just axe them?
The original myth is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
I wrote a treatment for my version of Peter Pan. It was I'm always putting people in contemporary settings because fuck it, why not? But it's like the Lost Boys and Peter Pan are like bank robbers. I had this idea where like Peter Pan just kept constantly killing his crew because Peter treated the Lost Boys in the outside of the Disney story in the original tale. Peter's kind of a murderer. And so there's also this book called Lost Boy, which I want to read, which is about, it takes place from Hook's perspective. And he was once one of Peter's Lost Boys, and he just grew up and kind of wants to kill him because of that. And I'm just like, oh, that sounds awesome. But we're going to dive deeper into Peter Pan in general in a moment. But I say all that to say, back to the other thing about my mom, I think about my mother a lot when I think about this because I also don't necessarily share this with my mom. But it was through my mother that I found out that like movies were actually filmed and these people were already. I remember when I first we come home from the dentist and I knew Hook was coming on TV and I had this weird idea that like all the actors and everybody was going to wherever the fuck they were making this thing and they were going to be doing it live that night, and that's just how I thought movies were. And it was that day that my mom explained to me that no, they filmed that at that time. I think they had filmed it years ago, but they had filmed it many years before, and that's, you know, they write a movie, and I learned the entire, as much as my mother knew about making movies. My mom didn't have a whole lot of knowledge about making movies, but from what she knew, she explained to me, and that like blew my mind of like, holy shit, like that's what they, you know, my 8-year-old self is like sitting in the back and I'm thinking, oh my God, I want to do that one day. I don't know when, but one day I'm going to do that. And so that all started with Hook. And I always think about my mom who explained all that to me. So whenever I watch this movie, I'm always just thinking I go back to that 8-year-old boy in that back seat listening to my mom tell me that about movies. And yeah, that's always been a really, really powerful thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, anybody who doesn't like Hook can suck a dick. And so there's that. But let's talk about Peter Pan in general. What is your relationship to Peter Pan in your life? I know, Jaylon, you touched on this a little bit about like, your understanding, but for the rest of you guys, what was your relationship to Peter Pan growing up, and now that you're adults, how have you viewed it? I mean, I don't know if you guys think about Peter Pan on a daily basis, but still.
Peter Pan was like part of the DNA of my world as a little, since I was a little kid. You know, I was definitely one of those kids. I'm like, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to be a teenager. I don't want to be an adult. I just want to be this. I mean, I was definitely like that. Like, I was like horrified at the idea of growing up. But Peter Pan, like, I mostly just knew from the Disney animated movie, and that was just like so cool. But I think what's interesting is there was always this understanding with other stories that it was fake. There was, it's just a story. But Peter Pan was in this weird realm of my head as a kid. I was like, it was real. So I have this memory, this real memory that a friend was sleeping over at my house, and the way my childhood bedroom was situated, like I had this window. The way I laid, you could look up at the night, and we were like totally convinced that night that Peter Pan was going to come to my room and take us to Neverland, because it was the place that we wanted to be. And it's interesting because I had the Disney movie, but I also had Hook. So for me, I didn't understand how film dates, copyrights, and the 50s versus the 90s and stuff. So I thought they were meant to be together. They're always kind of tied in my brain as one. And I just thought it was a real place that I could get to if I just could get there. And that was always the thing for me that I always thought was really fascinating. Then I got older and I became a teenager and all this stuff was going on. And I still liked Peter Pan, but it was, found out I can never get there anymore. And I was really interested in this idea of like, what is the origin of Peter Pan? But then everyone had an origin, so that was the thing. But as I got older, and it's interesting with Hook because I have a very particular feeling of the movie when I was a kid, which was mostly just, it's Peter Pan, flying, Robin Williams, Captain Hook, yada, yada, yada. And now as an adult, I look at it, I'm like, okay, kind of picking up things and elements that are in it, and that's kind of part of Peter Pan for me. There's like, I know Peter's like psychopathic in the book and blah blah blah, but reading it more, I find it fascinating because what Barry, the author, invented is just extraordinary, because it is this intrinsic yearning in everyone to, or not everyone, but most people, to not grow up. And yet when you see someone who doesn't grow up, it's horrible. And if you read the book, I know it was a play, but specifically I know this is in the book version, there's something fascinating of basically Barry realizes he's created a monster. Because what can you do? Like, you can't, growing up is terrible, but you can't be a kid forever either. And the one thing that tempts Peter is the love of a mom. That's the one thing he can't have, being himself. And it just endlessly fascinates me. And there's a relationship to this with Disney's Tarzan, but we don't have time to unwrap that. But I find it really fascinating. And yet, Neverland is this amazing place, pirates and native folk, which I always imagined or hoped. Let's not get into that conversation with Disney.
And let's not bring up the 1950s stage or 60s
Yeah.
stage play rendition.
Yeah.
With
So
a
there's
very,
that.
very white tiger lily
Yeah.
being very racist.
Cheapers. Anyway, but yeah, but I was like, well, I imagine I was like, they're the original people of Neverland, and that just really fascinated me. And like, there's animals and rhinos and mermaids and this, and it's great. But what's interesting, Jaylon, what you said is there was one time I was watching the Disney animated version, and I picked up. I'm like, yeah, Wendy wants to, she wants to go to Neverland. She doesn't want to leave the nursery. She wants to be a kid. Then she goes to Neverland, and I mean, the mermaids are bitches to her like immediately, and that's the specific word there. Like, they're horrible. And in this movie, in the Disney one, the pirates are kind of just little goofy, which is fine. But in this version, I mean, the pirates are like, they want war, murder. They're not. They're bad adults. They're like the worst kind of adults who are still kids, and that's not great. And then even Rufio says, we kill pirates. Like, there is a violence in Neverland, then that great. And frankly, in the Disney version with Wendy, she's like, her part of her story is realizing she doesn't really belong here, because Neverland is only of a certain age. And that became really fascinating. It kind of was a comfort to me too, where it's like, maybe I never had to be there. But in any case, Peter, that's a long-winded answer to your question, as I'm off to do. But it's something that I still find incredibly fascinating and terrific. And I love on the surface level, but I also love on a deeper level, because I think it's able to scratch a lot of different anxieties in my head without sending me over the edge, if that makes sense. So, which is to say, also on your comment, Jaylon, about like, it's kind of weird. It is. It's not like, oh, it's meant to be that, but it is kind of weird. And I think everyone in the back of their heads always kind of thinks that. Like in the Disney version, so in Hook, they have a town. The pirates have a town. Great. In the Disney version, they're on a boat. What? You want to hang out on a boat forever and it's an island? Okay. It's sort of that thinking, which is fascinating. So something I've always listened to stories is the answer to your question, Jared.
Being able to scratch at different anxiety, like specific anxieties that you have without sending you over the edge, I relate to that. I think I always wanted something that had more of that innocence that I missed in childhood. And that was my struggle with growing up, is suddenly the world is not as innocent as I thought. But I think the point that you bring up about actually people who refuse to grow up are monsters in a way, because they become this perpetually selfish, self-destructive and destructive to people around them person, because they never grow out of that selfishness of realizing that the world is bigger than just them. So I think that's an interesting caveat to see, like, the violence and some of the things in Neverland that felt misplaced for me actually make a lot of sense in that light, when you think of like, no, this is like legitimately what a society run by children who refused to grow out of their selfishness would look like.
Well, there's also ideas, theories out there, I don't know if it's any part of canon, that the pirates are the Never Boys who grew up. Can't read, can't write, they're not exactly intelligent.
Well, it's a reasonable theory. I could buy that. What about you, Alex? So what was your relationship with Pan? Or Peter Pan?
Just want to speak on one more thing about Peter Pan. It's not innocent. Nothing about this is an innocent story.
Yeah.
All of this is a very dark psychological series of traumas with a layer of whimsy on top, with the promise of a false heaven.
And I think that's where I was mixed up when I was younger, because I wanted the idea that I had of what I wanted the Peter Pan myth to be for myself was different from what it actually was in that sense.
And so to answer your question, Jared, for me, Peter Pan wasn't someone who was a role model. Growing up as a kid, films were my life. I would tell time by films or TV shows. We drive down to LA to go to Disneyland. It's like a 6-hour drive. I'll ask, how long is it going to take? My parents would be like, oh, it's going to take 3 movies and 2 TV shows. So, Hook was one of those films I was like, I would ask, is it a kid film or adult film? Trying to differentiate between an hour runtime to 2 hours. Like, is it adult film or kid film? Like, adult film, like kind of like Hook, that's long. But, Peter Pan for me, I was, for some reason, searching for identity at a young age. And Peter Pan was someone who I did not want to model myself after. At least not the Peter Pan that we know from the stories, not the Peter Pan from his younger time. But what I saw as a kid was somebody who was capable of great growth. Someone who did get the chance to recognize the problems, and it had to be external. It didn't come from within, it was external. And that wasn't something I liked either. So my relationship with Peter Pan is more of that he's a foil to who I wanted to become.
Interesting.
I had a very interesting relationship with Peter Pan. It was mostly in my teen years and then maybe into my 20s. But a big part of it was that as you know, I'm always vulnerable on here and I'm always putting my shit out in the street because I don't give a fuck. But when I was a teenager, I tried to kill myself and I was obsessed with death. Stupid reasons, but I was just obsessed with doing that and I knew that's what it had to be. I ended up going to a group home and I stayed there for a very long time. But when I went there, I felt my mother, because my mother had brought me there and under the impression that we were just going to go and look at it. And that was it. But then it became, you're going to stay here when I was there. And that was like the biggest betrayal to me, an abandonment. It hit me so hard. And then at the same time, I was also getting abandoned by the church in which we were involved in. And I was just dealing with a lot of abandonment on right after attempting suicide. So for me, I had found Peter Pan. I had read a little bit about Peter Pan while I was there. And a big thing that just stood out to me was the idea of this character who felt abandonment so profoundly that they refused to grow up. And they lived in a place where they refused. And so to me, I've always believed this, that my arrested development began from the moment in which I went into that group home until the moment I stopped living with my friend on his couch. That is where I stopped. Where I started aging again or growing up again after that point. But from that period of time, that to me was always my Neverland. That period of time was always my Neverland because even though I was getting older, there was no development, there was nothing happening. And so I just genuinely believed. And in a lot of ways, I saw myself as, opposite of what Alex said, I saw myself as Peter Pan in the sense of, one, I was incredibly selfish. I was consistently rounding people up to like convince them to join me in some sort of rebellion against some sort of thing, and I was always leading the way. And then when they didn't serve me anymore, I would either kick them out of the group or I would set them up to get in trouble. I was a little shithead, like I really was. So
We need to
when I was terrible.
You
But
were
I
a genius even back then, but
I felt justified in it, and I felt justified in it by my abandonment. I felt like if people weren't going to be there for me, then I didn't need to care about the outcome. Like, nobody cared about the outcome for me. So why did I need to care about the outcome for anybody else? And it was a very long time before I realized that's no way to live. You're never going to have genuine relationships. You're never going to have genuine friendships or anything with people if you don't do that. And I was able to change that. But my connection to Peter Pan was, my connection to Peter Parker is a different story. But my connection to Peter Pan has always been, when I watch or read or look at him, it's always like I'm looking back at a younger version of myself, and I understand that character, and I empathize with that character, and I say, I get it. I see you. I see why you're doing all the things. It's the thing that we see so often in so many stories of hurt people. So although the stories never officially state that Peter kills the Lost Boys, it does say that he thins them out. So you can do with that what you will. But
well, Pan straight up was just stealing children to kill them.
So there you go. So it's like, yeah, I was not killing anybody for the record, but I was destroying people's spirits. So, let's weigh it out a little bit. But yeah, that was my relationship to Peter Pan. And so when I watch Hook, which is a very different version of Peter Pan, it's a like we said, it's this middle-aged version, and they don't talk about what Peter was like too much when he was a kid. So, I mean, for all we know, he could have been kind of a dick, and they just but they seem to be happy to see him. So maybe he wasn't so bad.
You're talking about children who also have trauma, who have
True.
some slight flicker of a parental figure.
mm-hmm.
It's like a cult. It's like when you join a cult and it's like, oh, the leader is kind of awesome, but he's also kind of shit, but he's not as bad as like wherever the fuck I came from. So, So I get that. So talk about the Lost Boys a little bit. I sometimes think of the Lost Boys as a concept of forgotten versions of ourselves. And I wonder, am I alone in that theory? Do you guys think that? Or how do you guys view the Lost Boys per se?
I see that. Interesting. One more little point about my experience with Peter Pan was I actually kind of recently in my adulthood, I read Peter and the Starcatchers, which was a Peter Pan adaptation that I actually truly love. And the Lost Boys there were the backstory of Peter Pan. That adaptation was he had been at an orphanage and all of these other Lost Boys were orphans with him. And then when they got stuck in the middle of a war that they didn't ask to be in, Peter was their leader that led them away from the conflict of adults. And so I think that in my mind, the Lost Boys became a metaphor for people who are just tired of being at the mercy of a world that's so much bigger and colder and crueler than they are, and are just looking to follow someone to peace.
And that's interesting because I feel like as a kid, the Lost Boys, and for the record, I never could stand the Disney Lost Boys. The Hook Lost Boys are so much cooler, and believable, frankly. So with these Lost Boys, as a kid, I always thought they were just kind of like the lackeys of Peter, but they were also the cool, because for the record, it's Dante Bosco, Fire Lord Zuko himself as Rufio. Like, that's like, was peak cool. As one of the peaks of cool as a kid. Still is. But,
yeah.
As you said, you can't go to a con without seeing Rufio.
Right.
And I thought the Lost Boys were, that was what I wanted to be. I wanted to just escape and be a kid forever and do all the stuff. So I saw them as kind of the lucky ones, the ones who were able to get there. And Lost Boys was like a cool thing. Now when I'm an adult, I see them and I'm like, these are kids who got rescued in one way, which is good because they were escaping something terrible, whatever it must have been for each of them. And so Lost Boys is, like you said, kind of a cool thing, like I'm not going to be trodden anymore. But at the same time, I see them as kind of sad because they're kind of like what you were saying, Jared. They're trapped in their own little world and they're limited. And so I see them as kind of both ways. So in terms of me, it is a little bit like what I could have been in an interesting way. Not if I had never grown up, but if I had never realized there was nothing inherently wrong with growing up. So it is an interesting mirror, like you said. I have to agree with that.
What about you, Alex?
See, when I was a kid, one of the other prevalent themes for me in this one is the sense of abandonment. My father wasn't around. He was just a long-haul trucker. And my mother, she had really, really bad pain problems. Like, think fibromyalgia and then another pain syndrome that makes any kind of pain you feel on top of that 10 times worse. That's what she had. Horrible. So she wasn't around much. My father wasn't around much. And my brother's actually my half-brother, so he'd actually spend half the time at home. So a lot of the time, as a kid, I was, free range to do whatever I wanted. And we lived in this apartment complex, and it was literally like the Lost Boys. We would just go around that apartment complex and just cause havoc, which is what we did. So it's fun because I did kind of get to experience a little bit of that as a kid with absolutely no parental oversight and just running amok. It's going to get you into problems, I'll tell you that, though. But the Lost Boys, throughout the story of Peter Pan, have kind of evolved in very interesting ways. Like the beginning, they meant to just be children lured away by families that didn't watch over their children, and then he would collect them and kill them. In Hook, there are children who've been abandoned, forgotten. They're not children who ran away for most of their stories. They're children who've been abandoned and forgotten. And with over 300,000 children in the foster care system in America, it's a better allegory for how we abandon children.
I like the way that, and I know that it's not an adaptation of Peter Pan in any way. It's just kind of a nod to, and then thematically, it's similar. But Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys, that version of where David is kind of a shadow for Peter Pan, and then the other people of his crew are kind of like the Lost Boys. But I've always saw it as like, well, Peter has his own story. He's got his own thing that's happening in the story, and so we follow his adventure. But the Lost Boys to me were always like this thematic cautionary tale of in a way, the loss of, which is why I think that the Lost Boys movie does this well too, of the cost of never growing up, the loss of humanity. Because honestly, how long can you be morally good, kind, or any of those things if you never grow up? We learn as children morals and things like that as we get older. The challenges that we make, the character development moments of our lives ultimately make us into, hopefully, decent human beings. But as children, we lack a lot of the guardrails a lot of times of like, oh, we shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't treat people this way, or I shouldn't take that. We're very impulse driven as children. And so if you think, when you think about the Lost Boys, you think about, oh, these are kids, they're kids forever. It's like there's a whole lot of impulse in that. There's a whole lot of, they never really become morally upstanding individuals or just decent human beings. And I loved that the Joel Schumacher movie really did play on that. Like I said, again, I know it's not an adaptation, but still, the idea always made sense to me. And it, making them vampires which obviously anything vampires, I'm game. But like, making them vampires definitely did tell a very specific, it showed the exact same thing that you see in Hook, because I mean, even in Hook they're like that. Like, the Lost Boys are still a little bit, they have problems. I mean, they're like, yes, there's trauma involved, but these are guys that, like you said, Rufio's like, we kill pirates, and they're all just like, yeah, like let's go commit murder. I'm cool with it. Like, it's like, no, that's not. And then, like, even when they're like training Peter, and it's just like their natural disregard for like his well-being, and like, yeah, let's just shoot him out of this large slingshot, and like, whatever happens. That's you're either a sociopathic human being, adult, or you're a child. There's the only other ways that you can really look at that. Like, there's no way that you can do that. So, like, I acknowledge that the Lost Boys are a great cautionary tale for the need for maturity, the need for growth, the need to do those. And while Peter, even in the Disney movies, because Peter's a dick in the Disney movies. Like, when I think about it, like, Peter is such an asshole. Yeah. And like, when I was a kid, I loved it. I was like, oh yeah, this says a lot about me as a child. But like, when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, dude, like, treat people like shit and don't respect the Native Americans. It doesn't matter. And I was just like, now I'm an adult and I'm like, oh, see, this is why I couldn't be a Lost Boy, because it would be terrible for the world. It would just be, I'd be terrible.
Captain Hook spoke some wisdom throughout that film. I don't know if anybody caught it. Like that Arrested Development thing you were saying, and that self-interest, Captain Hook was like, I want a toy. I want a puppy. I want a story. I want me, my, right?
Yeah.
As a child who raised children, because my mother was also chronically ill, I very much related to that. I saw the unfortunate truth of it.
Just felt it in your soul.
Yeah, I did. And also, if you ever do babysitting or like raising a large amount of kids, a bunch of kids running after you with murderous intent is actually your worst nightmare.
Only because you can't kill them.
Yeah. Exactly.
That is fair. No, I genuinely, and I related to when he was talking to Maggie about like why her parents put her to bed. And I was like, yeah.
They were happy.
Before you were born, they would stay up all night just to see the sunrise.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, kids suck. And so, like, one of the many reasons why I'm not a teacher and a parent, I like them enough to be like, I will babysit somebody's kid, whatever, as long as I can give them back, I'm fine. Yeah. And so I have a limit. My social battery depletes a lot faster when children are involved. And so I can see myself being Captain Hook and just being like, not that I want to murder kids, but like that to the point where I'm like, your parents hate you and you should know that. But like, so it's just,
this is us giving huge props to Charles for his job as a teacher and a tutor, because you do the thing that all of us very much struggle with. You have a hard job.
Being horribly underpaid.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Respect. Charles, you were Granny Wendy. And I respect it. Okay, question for Jaylon. This is Jaylon's corner. She hates this, by the way.
I want a corner where no one's looking at me. Like, I want to sit in the corner. I want a corner that's named Jaylon's corner, but I don't want anyone looking at me when I'm like eating it.
I know. It's like just behind a curtain. Just put her behind a curtain, and it's like a little confessional. That's what it'll be. Just a little confession booth. Just sit there. We'll just turn your camera off, and we'll ask you questions.
No, the camera will be on. It'll just be on the confessional booth.
So since I'm editing these episodes, I'm going to have to put that in there now, huh?
Yes. But since this is your corner, we're asking the question of, does this story let you in?
Definitely. And it is because of the universal human truth that it speaks to. Even if it's weird, even if there's parts of it that I didn't necessarily appreciate, the essence of, as Alex was saying, the feeling that it gives you and the truth that it speaks to, of all of us relating to that struggle of adults who are trying to deal with adult problems and struggling to raise kids, because raising kids is hard, but also being the kid who just wants their parents to pay attention to them, to show them love and care. And I think that those themes are so universal. I mean, we've all experienced it. So that's where someone who doesn't even necessarily appreciate the movie can still enjoy the story, because it's speaking to something deeper there.
So, just to make you a little more uncomfortable, I'm just going to go standing ovation. That was so amazing.
I'm editing that out.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Up, Jared, I'll get a spotlight ready to go.
I was going to do the thing on here. I don't think it'll let me do it. Hold on, it might actually. There you go, Jalen. There you go. I would have given him more notice to get you a spotlight, but you'll just have to do with our canned applause. So, our next segment, our take. So, if you could change one thing about Hook, what would you change? And do not give me that Cowboy Bebop shit we got last week of, I wouldn't change anything. I want some honest answers.
First of all, that wasn't shade. Period. So
I don't think I would change anything in Cowboy Bebop.
There you go.
Alex, no!
The universal opinion.
Yeah.
This is I'm upset.
If anyone has an idea of what they would want to change in Cowboy Bebop, comment below.
Yeah. That way I don't have to thin out these Lost Boys over here about... No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. I know one. Because here's the thing. The movie is riddled with all these little weird things. There's some weirdnesses and blah, 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 blah. And I was, it's hard to pick something. Because, by the way, I quote this movie all the time. Like, all
so
the time.
quotable.
Like, I think it was like 2 birthdays ago. I was at a restaurant. I was like, I don't drink, but I'm going to try champagne, right? But it said bubbly. And that's why I literally did for Hook. I want my bubbly. Give me my bubbly. I just do it ad nauseum. Like this, I quote this movie all the time, so it's like weird to try to find something specific. But here's something, and I know
every time I have champagne, that's what I think.
Yes, absolutely. But if there's one thing that I can't get over, and I don't know if it ruins the plot or thematics or whatever, and I know what it does in the plot structurally, but God, I hate that Rufio dies.
Yeah.
That's always upset me. And he's like, I wish I had a father like you. I'm like, and then the kids later are like, that was a great game. It's like, and I get it. Like,
go with the fact that they're just so broken and trauma and they have no regulation.
None.
Yeah. And it's like, the thing is, I get it, because honestly, I think it's fascinating that Jack buys into the pirate life, and then he finally gets to see what these, trash human beings do, which is murder. And the Lost Boys are killing pirates and stuff, but like, come on, they have...
Peter Pan's the first one to draw blood.
First of all, yeah.
True, yeah.
And but also, like, the Lost Boys brought, like, eggs and...
Yeah, they're throwing rotten vegetables at them.
Yeah, they're throwing rotten vegetables, and at the end of the day, a kid killing an adult is, come on, that's self-defense, unless they're like, little or whatever. But like, in this context, it's self-defense. But so I like that Jack breaks the spell of Neverland through seeing actual death. But why Rufio, man? Like, it's just not fair, damn it.
Because you had to kill.
Yeah, and it just makes me mad. That's all. I know I can't explain it or clarify or whatever, but I wish if there was something I could change, I just wish there was a way for Rufio to live somehow.
What about an animated series called Rufio, talking about the time in between when Peter Pan left and came back?
You had me at animated series Rufio, so yeah.
Because he can still do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about you, Jaylon?
I mean, just obviously, I would change the ending with that stupid crocodile, because I was waiting for the crocodile to come back.
Jaylon,
and the way that it came back, it was so underwhelming and disappointing. I was waiting for this thing to be like hilarious and exciting, and one of those moments where you can say, "Ha! I knew it was happening," and this was just not it. And also, it just didn't make any sense. So yeah, Charles, when you said that, I was like, I really hoped that you had some better ideas for how to make that happen, because I don't have any ideas of how to make it better. I just know it needs to be better.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The crocodile, it doesn't make sense, and it pisses me off because of the fact that they went out of their way to have Hook slice the stomach open with the hook, and it and the air comes out, and we're like, oh, okay, so that thing is really dead. Okay, cool. And then all of a sudden, it falls on him, and then he disappears, and then it burps. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold the fuck up! I thought the thing was dead,
And also,
and why was it not disembodied,
looks
disemboweled?
like sentient.
And if it's dead, why can't he,
Get out?
Yeah.
Here's how you fix that. His hook gets stuck. It activates the thing. It tumbles down, crushes him. Boom, done.
Yeah, that would have made sense.
Yeah, there you go.
What about you, Alex? What would you change?
I would turn it into a limited TV series and take my time with some of these developments.
Solid. I guess for me to answer it, it would be basically the thing that I pitched to Charles a while back. I would have turned this movie into a dystopian film. So that way when Peter comes back, Hook is basically the dictator of Neverland. And it was just about him kind of overthrowing this thing. And that's also just because I'm obsessed with rebellions and things of that nature.
And to tell a story like that, you would need a TV show.
Yes, agreed. Collaboration.
There we go.
No more projects right now.
I know.
Creative ADHD.
Yes. No, I definitely don't want to do it. It's just if I were going to do it, that would be what I want to do. I don't have enough love in my heart.
Okay, we don't even need to write this down. The idea is immortalized.
Yes.
There you
go. Exactly. It'll go in my Firestarter kit, my Firestarter folder, and that'll be where it exists for all time, next to Nazareth.
We need Nazareth.
Yes, I know. It's there. It is in there.
I really want that.
You say Nazareth?
Yes, it's my small villain version of Jesus. So, let's do a fun little game before we get out of here. We're going to do what we call casting chaos. Now, Jaylon, you don't have to participate because you
I don't know enough celebrities.
Don't know enough. Yes.
I don't.
So we're going to recast Hook, and we want to know who would you put in the roles?
Dude, you can't do that because this cast is amazing. Dustin Hoffman as Hook, he's one of my favorite film villains. Bob Hoskins with Smee and Robin Williams. Dude, I wish we could just human sacrifice a ton of people and bring back Robin Williams without that disease and everything. I swear to you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but I have no idea because I feel like you'd have to find some underground TV people. Okay, this is super, super weird. I don't know if it would work, but I was just thinking about this because of his bit in the Watchmen sequel show. Tim Blake Nelson as Smee or Hook could be really interesting. That just occurred to me.
Tim Blake Nelson.
Tim Blake.
I don't know who that is.
Where would you know Tim Blake? Golly, he's kind of like a journeyman actor like Paul Giamatti.
I know who he is.
Yeah.
I see his face. I know who he is.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that.
Peter, I have no idea. You can't match Robin Williams. I can't think of a single person who could, living today.
Problem is, nowadays, you would probably end up going to someone like Chris Pratt.
Yeah,
Oh my god. I don't know. That was the first thing that popped into my head too, and I don't know why, and I hate it because I hate him so much. I can't stand him. I can't stand him.
Like any modern recasting's probably going to have Kevin Hart and The Rock.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah, or I don't know.
Who's looking for
Tom Holland? Who I don't really find all that impressive either. Kind of boring kind of casting. So I think you would have to find someone.
I think Austin Butler would be a solid Peter Pan.
I was kind of, and this is not because I didn't appreciate the actor who played Hook in this film, but I just immediately pictured Captain Jack Sparrow.
Oh, Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I just pictured his face and his mannerisms in that role before I started watching the actual movie.
Which is interesting because I know everyone always talks about Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow for good reason, but man, another one of my favorite villains is Jeffrey Rush as Barbossa in the first Pirates movie. So I have two pirate captains with funny hats as two of my favorite film villains.
You know who I'd make Hook? Jason Momoa.
Oh.
I don't see it, but pitch it.
Because I really want to see him. I want to see him redeem himself as a villain. Because I've seen him as a villain but the main thing I've ever seen him as a villain in was Fast and Furious 10 or whatever the fuck that shit was. And it was arguably he was the most redeemable part of that movie, but he was just more of a silly villain than he was ooh, sinister type of person. So I would do that. This is more of a gag than it is a legitimate answer, but Morgan Freeman would be my Shmi. And that's just because I have to drop Morgan Freeman in everything.
Why can't you make him? What was the kid's name who lost his marbles?
Toodles.
Toodles.
Yeah.
No, who would be Toodles? Oh, he's
Bill
dead.
Murray.
Never mind. I could see that.
If we're not worrying
I could
about
see
budget, I would like to see Hook remade. We'll keep Dustin Hoffman as Hook, and everyone else is a Muppet.
Yes. Perfect.
Oh goodness.
This is a plug, everyone, that Disney, whoever runs the Muppet department, if you could hire me, got my pitch, Planet of the Muppets. It's a great pitch. Please, I'm begging you. Please let me make a Muppet movie. Please. Please.
Who's the kid that played Percy in the new Percy Jackson show? Whoever that kid is, I think he'd be a great Jack. One, because he's a fantastic actor. I think he's a fantastic actor. I'm always blown away, and I always love when kids are great actors. I watched the new version of Children of the Corn. The little girl that's basically like the antagonist of the film is unbelievable. I was like, this girl's like probably no older than like 11, and she was like, she was better than everybody else in the movie, and I was just like, oh, that's pretty badass. So I love when I see like a kid that kid that plays Percy Jackson. He's really, really great. That movie he did with Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds, as usual, is weird. The kid was solid. The movie was trash, but he was solid. So I mean, yeah, I think that. I would do that for Wendy. She just died, so no.
Yeah, Maggie Smith's actually aged up for that role, and by the time she was doing Harry Potter, she had the right look.
I was gonna say Diane Keaton, but she just died.
Haley Mills.
Who's Haley Mills? Let me see who Haley Mills is.
She played Pollyanna when she was young. She also was she was in the original film of The Parent Trap.
Yeah, I know her.
Yeah.
I can see that. That'd be cool. And then for what's her name? Peter's wife.
Moira.
This is not a good casting, but I just want to see her in a Peter Pan movie. Charlize Theron. I want to see her as I want to see her in everything all the time. I've been in love with Charlize. I've been in love with Charlize Theron since
Mighty Joe Young.
Yes, I have. That I've just. Oh my god.
How about for Tinkerbell?
Yeah. How did we forget Tinkerbell?
Actually, Tinkerbell was one of the more contested actors. Well, not contested. She was one of the actors they had the most problems with.
So this is kind of what I was thinking. I thought that I had an unpopular opinion about Julia Roberts because I feel like she's been typecast. She's always the tragic love interest. She doesn't even play it well, and she's not even pretty.
Oh God.
First
of all, Jaylon, listen. I'm gonna.
I have to go back to my corner now.
I'm closing out your camera right now, and you're out of here. I am so offended.
Julia Roberts is not that impressive for me.
All right, Charles.
Okay, so at least I'm not alone.
Alex, I don't know if you have any boxing gloves anywhere in the house, but I need to get them on, and I need to fight Charles. This is craziness. You guys are crazy. Listen, I will say,
I think she's okay as Tinkerbell-ish, but I don't particularly care.
I don't think Julia Roberts was necessarily the greatest Tinkerbell. However, I will stand for no Julia Roberts disrespect in general. I think she is a fantastic actress. I think she is gorgeous. I've always been torn between her and Sandra Bullock, but
that's not a question, Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, because she's not typecast. She can play more than one role.
But it's a question. Don't do that. What is this? What is it? It's not a question. It's a question. It's a debatable thing.
Half the people in the audience don't like Spielberg. Why should Julia Roberts be any different?
Fair.
I shouldn't.
So apparently this is just like a public execution. Apparently, because I brought everybody together and just from all sides, I'm just catching bullets here. I think Julia Roberts. I loved her in. I've loved her in so many things, but specifically, my favorite thing I've ever seen her in was the Ocean series. Just because I thought she was fantastic in that.
To be fair, I need to watch that before I state my opinion.
Dude, the Ocean trilogy is so good.
Especially Ocean's 11.
You're giving that kind of level of harsh criticism without...
I know.
Without seeing...
You're right. Yeah, I went too far with the criticism. I publicly apologize.
Yeah, it's back to the corner.
Now, if we want to talk about Joseph Campbell that way, we're all good.
Joseph Campbell?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Alex has his beef.
Mm.
And it's respectable. I respect it.
I just don't like, misogynistic Nazis that like to reduce cultural stories to sound bits.
Well, that's information I didn't know. Every time there's some dude you respect, all of a sudden they're like, Schneider.
But they were a Nazi.
The fucking random German. No, the German gibberish was hilarious.
Or pig.
But no, we have fair. We have to get our Tinkerbell.
Zendaya.
Yes.
That could work.
Yes.
But I feel like Zendaya feels like a Chris Pratt choice. It's like one of those, like, not to say that Zendaya's not good. It's just like Zendaya's like the obvious choice because she's like arguably one of the greats of our current generation.
Definitely.
Right now. And it's like there's not much that you can't see Zendaya in. I think that she wouldn't.
Fair.
Let me burst your bubble though when it comes to casting. Typically, it's not about how well they perform. When you're at that level, you're expected to be able to just take the script and when they give your audition, you repeat exactly what you did in the audition and you're on set and that's it. But it's not about who's the best for anything. It's typically about who can bring in the most money.
Mm.
This is
Yeah.
fair. This is fair.
So that's why Zendaya and Kevin Hart and The Rock are getting all it is right now, because everybody knows that they're just going to be a seasonal player and they're going to try to rack in as much money as possible while they're popular. That's why MCU has all the same actors in all the same movies.
I'll tell you right now, if they ever made a Hook remake and they put Kevin Hart in it, I refuse to see it. I do like Kevin Hart, but I refuse to see Kevin Hart in a Hook movie. That would be obscene and it would hurt my feelings in so many ways. I would say, though,
Kevin Hart as Peter Pan.
I could actually
Hold on. What about a Wiz-style remake?
No, I'm suing. I am suing immediately. I'm getting very litigious over this. This it will not stand. I think for me, if we're not talking about Hollywood's way of casting, we're just talking about like pure fantasy.
Yeah.
For me, I would say Zoe Kravitz. Yeah. Because I don't know. I love Zoe Kravitz. She will be my wife someday. That will happen. You heard it here first on Let's Talk Stories. So it will happen.
Is Wendy?
Who?
Kathy Bates.
Oh, I love Kathy Bates. I would like that. I love Kathy Bates. I'm trying to... Oh, Jaylon, you have to watch Matlock.
Yep.
The new Matlock. Yeah. You got to see it, Jaylon, because I think you would really, really like it. But yeah, so that is our crazy, chaotic casting chaos that we did. All stray bullets to Julia Roberts' side. It was a fantastic...
They were not straight.
They were not. Those were direct shots that were
not even across the
I want to publicly apologize to
I'm
Julia
so
Roberts
sorry.
on behalf
so sorry.
Of the
I
Let's
regret
Talk Stories podcast. Julia Roberts, we are so sorry. Don't destroy us with your Hollywood powers.
Full on broadside. And all Julia Roberts was doing there was standing there and waving.
Just being a fairy, just chilling, hanging out, and Jaylon was just like, nope, pow, dead.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This is, you offended me when you did this, and now I just had to,
I'm actually going to feel genuine guilt over it, though.
Don't.
I hope you
It's okay. Julia Roberts is rich, and she can take it.
I have no opinion.
On that note, that will bring us to the end of our show. Thanks for hanging out with us on Let's Talk Stories. I want to ask a question to the audience. What part of your childhood would you most want to revisit, and what do you think you'd find there now? I want to break you emotionally, so please, please, deeply think about this until you feel some level of sadness and cry. And then I will feel satisfied in knowing that happened. Not because I want you to cry, but because I want you to have a cathartic moment in life. And I want you to cry. Anyway, I haven't changed so much, I guess. I'm still a little bit of a lost boy. But we want to give a special thanks to Alex for joining us. Again, this was a long time in the making, and I'm glad that it has happened, that we were all able to... that I was able to take the worlds, all of my worlds, and smash them together in one podcast episode. And so thank you for being here, Alex. We really, really appreciate it.
It's good to
meet you
Charles face to face.
Yes, it was awesome to have you.
Same.
If you have anything that you want to promote or talk about that you're allowed to talk about that you want to put out there, here's the space where you can do so. We usually give our guests a chance to do that.
Well, none of my films have given me a press packet yet, so I don't think I can talk about all these things in post. But right now, the Filmmakers Association of Modesto, or the FAM as we like to call it, is currently working on our fundraiser to become a nonprofit, so that way we can be a fiscal sponsor and we can start helping people get tax write-offs for sponsoring films.
Nice.
So,
Sweet. Okay.
Jared has the
So-
link to that. I don't know if you like to post that anywhere, but we have a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
I got
I
you.
will. Yep, I will pass it over to Jaylon, and she will throw it in the show notes for folks to check it out. But overall, hopefully you guys found something that you enjoyed. If it cracked something open inside of you, please share it with someone else or someone who hasn't seen Hook that might want a different perspective on it, or someone who has and wants a different perspective on it. Share it over with them. And if it helps you change the way that you looked at things or whatever, let us know. Tell us in the comments, and we might talk about that next. But just remember always, stories don't just entertain us, they also explain us. Again, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.